and I jumped farther than I ever jumped in my life on my last jump. My dream comes true winning this nationals, but the medal, the dream and all was incredible. But what I was confused about was why I was unafraid. Like, what happened that, and I have all this hindsight now, but in the moment, what I'm saying is, I was a little torn up, or not torn up, but confused as to like the time, like this was the time I'd have been so afraid that I could hardly even focus, but I had so much clarity. And so that was the thing I wanted to figure out. I wanted to figure out, because I felt like if I could figure out why that happened, maybe I could do that going forward and I wouldn't revert back to being terrified all the time.
Welcome to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. I'm your host, Johnny Mango. This is the place where we inquire about lifestyle, culture, and careers. Weekly, we meet with new guests that make a contribution of their insightful stories about their careers and how those careers impact their lifestyle and culture. Hello, everybody. This is Johnny Mango, and welcome to another Minutes with Mango. Today we have an exciting guest. His name is Kenny Vaughan from Texas, and he's the author of the book, The Right Flight. And Kenny, you can say the rest of it.
Yeah, the book's called The Right Fight, just because I was in the wrong one for most of my life. And then How to Live a Loving Life is the subtitle.
Right. So The Right Fight and How to Live a Loving Life. Kenny, welcome. I'm interested in a lot of things that's happened in your life, and I'm going to let you tell your story. I know your story about from water skiing and how your wife helped you get through some issues and how that kind of led you on a journey and on a path, and I'll leave it to you. Why don't you share your story?
Okay, so, well, I'm 56 years old now, and spent the last 20 years focused on love. And not like when I say, every time I say that word, I'm thinking people are thinking romance or thinking all these different things. And that's not what I'm talking about, although that's maybe an element of it. And I got hung up on that about 20 years ago because, as you said, I was spent the first 20 years of my life as a long distance water ski jumper and trying to overcome fear so that I could achieve what I saw as my dream of winning a national championship. And I did everything I could to overcome fear. And it was like the harder I fought fear, the more I did, the worse it got. Nothing I was taught seemed to. I trained with a U.S. team coach. I trained with a lot of great coaches who could help me be a better athlete, but no one could really help me overcome my fear. Our sport's dangerous, as you can imagine. We're going around 70 miles an hour. We hit a ramp. We're rising about 3 stories, flying 3/4 of the length to the length of a football field. But then you also have the fear of failing. And so you're afraid of being injured, which is, that's most of the athletes can get over that, but the fear of failing is a whole different ballgame, So I was battling both. Eventually, I didn't tell my girlfriend I was afraid, but she figured it out, and she started writing scriptures on my equipment, like I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me, or God hadn't given me the spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And I thought that was encouraging, but I didn't really know what that meant. I just read them consistently. Long story short, I slowly started learning to act on God's word, and then I get back to a national championship, and we get 3 jumps in a competition. The longest jump wins, and the guy that was going in front of me was a guy everybody expected to win, and he jumped farther than I ever jumped in my life. I was trying to jump. I was doing everything I could to catch him. My second jump, I crashed and I tore up some of my equipment. We had 3 minutes for repairs, or it's a forced forfeit if you can't fix your gear in time. And so I had to go with some damaged equipment. And it was just a time that I would have been more afraid than I'd ever been in my life. It's like I got 1 shot left. I'm going to have to jump farther than I ever jumped in my life, and my gear's messed up. And I really didn't have any hope that I could win. And I just decided, I made a decision, said, you know what, never mind. I couldn't handle the pressure of thinking I had to try to win under their circumstances. And I just kind of gave up and said, never mind the gold medal, my dream. Lord, I just want to do the best I can for you. And when I made that decision, it was a paradigm shift. Is all best way I know to describe it. It was as if I had a higher calling with no chance of failing, that I didn't have to win, but I felt like I needed to finish. And after that, I was unafraid. And I jumped farther than I ever jumped in my life on my last jump. My dream comes true winning this nationals. But the medal, the dream and all was incredible. But what I was confused about was why I was unafraid. Like, what happened that, and I have all this hindsight now, but in the moment, what I'm saying is I was a little torn up, or not torn up, but confused as to like the time, like this was the time I'd have been so afraid that I could hardly even focus, but I had so much clarity. And so that was the thing I wanted to figure out. I wanted to figure out, because I felt like if I could figure out why that happened, maybe I could do that going forward and I wouldn't revert back to being terrified all the time. And so in that process, I just started digging deeper into what exactly did I do? What was I thinking? Just trying to relive everything, every piece of it. And what I say I stumbled on is I finally, for the first time in my life, I decided it wasn't about me and about my championship and about my dream. It was selfless instead of selfish. And then I was reading other scriptures, and I found the scripture that says that perfect love drives out fear. And I'm thinking, what in the heck does love have to do with fear? How do they even relate to each other? And in that process, I asked myself this question. And I asked myself this question because all the great coaches I ever worked with in athletics, one of the things they would always do that most coaches wouldn't do is they would boil everything down to the most fundamental, simple level you can imagine. Like if you were thinking about baseball, the first thing they want to talk about is, do you know how to hold a baseball bat? And you may think, hey, I'm an advanced baseball player. You're going to ask me something that silly. Do I know how to hold a bat? But they want to see exactly how you're holding the bat, because if you're not holding the bat properly and you think you are, no matter what they try to teach you, you're going to build on a broken foundation.
Right.
And so that's what I had learned from these coaches. So now I'm facing something I don't know who can teach me about. And so I just asked myself the question, what is love? And I didn't really know the answer to that question. I wasn't sure what love was. So I kind of set out on this journey thinking, it would be a few weeks or maybe a few months of just identifying, what is love, because my goal was to overcome fear. And if I felt like if I could really understand love, then maybe this wouldn't have been just a one-off, that I can live a different life, unafraid or less afraid. And so now it's 20 years later, and I'm still in the same place. So I'll say I just spent 20 years studying one thing, and it's been incredible, Johnny. It's just, yeah.
So, wow, that's a story, Kenny. That is a real story. Tell me a little bit. So here we are 25 years later. How would you describe love now, or what have you learned? What have you learned from the experience?
So what I've learned is that love is not what I thought it was. And not only was it not what I thought it was really the opposite of what I thought it was. So I think everyone knows that love is what we need. We all want to be loved, and we all want to love. And so what we end up doing is, and we want to be fruitful in life. And so what we end up doing is fighting to be loved. Everything we're doing is to try to appear to be loving, and then to make sure that we're loved. So I call that fighting to be loved. And in the process, we're killing love in our lives, because we think love is a feeling. We think love is what is actually the fruit of love. So what I would say is that if I was going to ask people, I've probably asked 5,000 people face to face in the last 20 years, what is love? How would you define love? And for the most part, no one has an answer. I've asked a lot of psychologists, and some very famous ones, and a lot of them will tell you that it's not describable. You can't define love. It's different for everyone. But I don't think that's true. So what I would say, to answer your question, I think love is doing what you believe is truly best for someone else, but not just doing what you believe is truly best for someone else. I think love is doing what is truly best for someone else, without regard for yourself. Meaning, because if I do what you have to realize is that I can do what I believe is best for you, but not for you, for me.
So what I'm hearing from you, Kenny, it sounds what I'm thinking of as you describe that is the golden rule: do unto others. The golden rule is do unto others as you do unto yourself.
Go ahead.
I'm hearing glimpses of that in what your description is.
Yeah, I would just say that though that love isn't just doing. Love really isn't doing at all. Love is why. So, well, love isn't a what. It's not what you do.
Okay.
In other words, so the golden rule is do unto others as you would have done have done unto you, right? So, but it's not just the love isn't just the doing. I think we all kind of understand that. So what happens is I'm following the golden rule, and in my mind, so I'm doing unto you as I would have you do unto me. But the problem is you're not doing to me as I would have you do unto me.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
So if I'm just following, and there's nothing wrong with the golden rule. I'm not saying that there is. But what I'm saying is the golden rule in and of itself is not love. Why you keep the golden rule determines whether or not you love. So if I'm doing unto you what I would have done unto me for your sake, not for me, then that would be love. But if I'm doing unto you so that you will do good, I'm doing good to you so that you will do good to me, I'm not loving you, I'm loving myself.
Right. So the other thing that comes to mind as I'm listening to you in these descriptions is, and I'm trying to reach back in my mind here, I've heard this saying, I can't quite get it right, but it really has to do with personal perception. In other words, how we see the world, we think that's how the world is. And what I'm hearing from you is kind of a similar thing, that if you apply your personal perception onto somebody else, you may not get it right, because with perception, it's really mirroring your own feelings rather than the other person.
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're saying. There's two thoughts I have when you say that. One, yeah, our perception may not be reality. It's our reality. I agree with that. Like what I perceive to be true and what I believe to be true, it does become my reality, even if it's a lie.
Right.
So like if I believe this house I'm in is on fire and it's not, it's still my reality. One of the things, there's 7 things that love is, there's 8 things that love is not. So it's like, I don't know if I can remember them all, but love is patient, is kind, is truthful, protects others, trusts, hopes, and perseveres. And love is not angry, rude, envious, boastful, prideful, selfish, delighting in evil, these kind of things. One of the 7 things that love is the truth. So the first one of the first responsibilities love has is to determine the truth, not and to do the best that it can to make sure that what it perceives as true is actually the truth. So if I'm gonna love my wife, then I can't assume what I believe is true in whatever circumstance or situation we're dealing with. I have a responsibility to humble myself, to be selfless enough to ask her and to ask her to help me understand, to help. This is where I might even say this is what I believe to be true, but but my goal is the truth, because the truth is my solution. I'm not my own solution. Like nothing will defend me and my wife at the same time better than the truth will. So we have a responsibility, not like you said, not just to do what we perceive to be true, thinking that we're doing what is best for someone else. But sometimes all we have is our perception. Sometimes we don't have the whole truth, and sometimes we can't get the whole truth. And in those circumstances, the best we can do is what we believe. So if I believe the house is on fire and you're in here with me, then I have no way of determining whether it is or it isn't, and I can't get you to tell me. If I love you, then I'm going to get you out of the house in front of me. Like I want you, that's me loving you. Now, once we get out of the house, you might be mad at me because the house wasn't on fire and you were warm in there and it's cold outside. Right? But you still know I loved you.
Yeah.
Because I believed that the house was on fire. And so,
Okay.
so sometimes I think that what the world does a lot of times is we're so worried about being loved instead of loving, that if someone has the wrong perception but still does what they believe is best for us, instead of being able to see that they were actually loving us, we're so offended that they didn't do to us what we'd have done to them if they'd have known about us what they didn't know, that we lash out and we fail to love them even though they actually loved us, because they didn't love us the way we wanted them to love us. And we make a big mess out of that. But if we'll just pay attention, and most people know this is the wonderful thing about love. It's as hard as it is sometimes to understand. It's very simple, but it is deep in some areas. Everyone knows it when they see it. So even if somebody drags you out of the house and you didn't want to go out of the house, once you get out, if you know the reason they drug you out of there was because they believed it was best for you, you might be mad at them for what they did, but they know that you know that they loved you. And so we know love when we see it.
Yeah, I think I think going back to what you're talking about, perception. One of the things I hear about in one of the reasons there's so much divorce in today's world is that people have gone into relationships without that pure understanding that you're describing. I've heard so many stories from people about, and I'm obviously not a psychologist or a counselor, but I've heard many stories about how people, quote, fall in love and they're attracted to some behavior by the other person. And then after a few years, what they're attracted to becomes what they're rejected to. It might be the way they wear their clothes. It might be the way they talk. All these little things become like nails on a chalkboard that originally were really attractive. And I think that's part of what you're describing is if we apply our perception in the wrong way, we can get into trouble. Whereas if we're looking out for the other person and being aware of the other person, we're better off.
Yeah, that's right. And the reality is no one falls in love.
Right,
We
right.
we may have this feeling that falls upon us. We feel as if it falls upon us. I'll just give you an example. I would have told you my wife and I've been married, I think, 28 years. Might be 20. I'll get myself in trouble. Pretty close to 28 years. So 28 years ago, I'd have told you I fell in love with this girl. And then we were in a premarital counseling class, and this couple was talking to us and said, love isn't a feeling, it's a choice. And I thought, wow, I've never thought of that. That could be true. And then I thought, well, what I feel for her, I'm not choosing to feel. So in that moment, I'm thinking that sounds good, but that's kind of foolishness, because I definitely am not choosing what I feel for her right now. And so I kind of blew that off. I wrote it off, that love is a feeling. It's not a choice. But what I was failing to realize was that what I felt for her, I was assuming that what I felt for her was for no reason at all, or some cosmic connection or something, like something just that was beyond my control, that I had nothing to do with. And if that's true, whenever the things that I first were attracted to, I'm no longer attracted to, they will become like nails on the chalkboard and all that. So it start driving me crazy. But the truth was, what I felt for her was not for no reason at all. I mean, so there's 7 things that love is, I mentioned. So when I
Yeah.
look back now, what I see was this girl, Tammy, my wife, what she was patient. She was kind. She was truthful. And sometimes truthful is not fun, but
Right.
it's for your sake, right? And she's protecting me. She's trusting. She's hoping. She's persevering. And so because Tammy is, and this is what I hope people can get. If people ask me, do you love your wife? I'm like, yes, what we're talking about, I love her with all my heart. But really, if you want to know if I love my wife, don't ask me, ask her.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because because I felt love for her because she's patient, kind, true, protecting, and all these other things. But if she becomes these 8 things that love is not: angry, rude, envious, prideful, boastful, selfish. So she stops loving me. She was loving me. I feel love for her. She stops loving me. If I think love is the feeling, the feeling is going to start falling away. And I'm going to say I fell out of love.
Right.
But if two people actually choose to love each other, then it's seasonal. Sometimes you got fruit, sometimes you don't have so much fruit.
Right.
But if you're willing to love through the hurt, because hurt's always coming, which means keeping the other person first, what's best for them, not anything they want, not just what pleases them, not just what makes them happy, but what is truly best for them. And if you have two people that are willing to do that, even if they don't even like each other that much, if they're really willing to do what's best for each other, truly do what's best for each other, long enough, they're going to start loving each other.
Right.
They'll start feeling the love.
Right. So I've got another question for you, and it has to do with men. Why do men struggle with the concept of love? What's that about? I've heard you talk about that before, so I wanted to ask you about that. And why do men struggle with that?
Because we think it's gushy and it's romantic and all these things that it's not. I'm not saying that there's not a romantic element to love, but a man is actually born to love his family. I mean, it runs in the fiber of his being. The problem is they aren't taught how to love, and they're sold alive what love really is. So a man loving his family is a man protecting his family, and a man doing what's best for. It's a man putting himself first, but putting himself last in his family. But what happens is, we grow up as boys and we aren't sure and we don't know what to do. And then the world and everybody comes along and tells us that we need to demand that we're respected and that men need to demand respect and that they hear that they should be the head of their household. So they think that means that they got to be the king on a throne, and not realizing that what they should be doing is laying down their lives for their families. And so as men, if we aren't careful, what happens is we go out and we get a family, and then we have the responsibility of that family, and we know that really we're not quite enough for everything that like I can't be as good a dad as I want to be. I can't be as good a husband as I want to be. And so then, because I'm afraid of that and I'm not flushing the truth out of that, then what happens is whenever my kids seem slightly disrespectful or my wife seems slightly disrespectful, then I come unglued because I'm fighting to be loved. I'm fighting my family to respect me. That's me loving myself. When a man's responsibility is to love his family, not so that he's respected, whether he's respected or not. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you actually love your family, you're going to actually find yourself respected. But if you fight your family to respect you, people are going to act like they respect you, but no one's going to respect you.
I'm thinking of the metaphor of, honey, I'm home. Where's my dinner?
Right.
As a way of getting disrespect rather than, hey, I'm home. What can I help with today? Or how was your day?
Yeah. How are you? Right.
Right. How are you? Versus, where's
Right. And you don't have to get that perfect. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I think we got to give everything. Look, at the core, especially the people that live under the same roof, they know who comes first.
Right.
And so if the wife and the children know that when it comes down to it, dad is putting us before himself. If your kids know that the reason you demand that if your children know the reason you demand that they respect you is not so you're respected, but so that they are respectful, then they know they're loved.
Yeah.
But if the truth is the reason you're demanding that you're respected is so that it's for your own sake, then they know that they aren't loved.
Right.
And men don't understand. And men, my experience with most men is they're all out there. I'm an alpha male. I'm a tough guy,
right,
or I'm passive. So they either become passive because I'm just not going to deal with it anymore. Y'all are too difficult. You're too hard. I'm just going to ride along. Y'all do whatever you want, and I'm just passive, which is selfishness. Or they become prideful. You're going to respect me. I'm the head of this deal. And instead of being a servant leader, they're a tyrant. And it's selfish, and they're wrecking their families. But I think men, if they had a better understanding, my experience has been whenever you help a man see what love really is, he's relieved and he wants to love.
Yeah. So also I had a question about how does fear, you talked about fear at the very beginning of our conversation about your fear of on the ski jumps. How does fear affect love? How does that, how do those two things, are they the opposites or do they?
So the best way I know to sum that up, and I can explain as well, but it's to just think of it this way: fear is a feeling, first of all. So fear is a feeling, and love is a decision. It's a choice, despite what we feel. And so fear comes, and fear comes to all of us. I'm not saying I never became fearless as a ski jumper, and I'm not fearless in life. Fear comes to me all the time. The difference is now I no longer, well, sometimes, but my goal is not to follow it. And there's two ways that I'll follow fear. I'll either just obey it, meaning that I'm afraid of what's over there, so I'm not going to go over there, or I will fight it, meaning I'm going to attack it. Where what our responsibility is we do need to run to fear to understand it. We need to see up close what is going on here, and then to follow the truth, not my fear. But if just meaning like if the house, I think the house is on fire, but I'm not sure, I run and see. If the house really is on fire, then I can get out of the house because I need to, just because it's the truth. But if I just run every time I smell smoke, half the time I'm running from lies. And and so what fear wants us to do, what happens is fear will do, if we're fear led, fear will do what is best for itself without regard for other people. That's the decisions it will make. Where love will do what is best for others without regard for itself. And so if I'm fear led, so I think your question is, are they related and how do they play on each other? I think every single decision we ever make, from the smallest to the largest, if it has anything to do with anyone else, maybe not going and having a drink of water or something, but every significant decision we make, we only have two choices: love or fear. What's best for me without regard for everyone else, or what I believe is true and best without regard for myself. Now, if it's really the truth, it's best for me also. So I often say, love is the best possible thing. Living a loving life is the best possible thing you will ever do for yourself. And here's the extra layer. This is what that I hope people can understand. And we talked about this in the beginning, so hopefully it'll help. But loving is the best possible thing you will ever do for yourself. But you can't do it for yourself, because if you do, it's no longer love.
I think I understand that. I have another question about forgiveness. Because I see so many people that become hurt by others, and they hold on to that, and they hold on to it, and they hold on to it even longer. And something that I've learned in my life is that forgiveness is really important. And what's your perspective on forgiveness in relationship to love?
Well, love, forgive, but then the question becomes like, I think where my perspective is this: I struggle with what you're talking about and wrestle with that for a long time in this whole process. But I had to go, well, once I asked what is love, then I had to ask what is forgiveness. And so originally what I assumed forgiveness was, and I think this is why people struggle with it. One or two reasons they struggle with it: this, or they love themselves. So if we really love ourselves, and I know the world says, hey, you can't love anybody else unless you love yourself. But I would say if you love yourself, you can't love anyone else, because love puts someone first. But if I love myself and you hurt me, then I hate you for hurting what I love. So that can be one reason. But I think the main reason people normally struggle with forgiveness is because they struggle with the idea of thinking that what someone did to them was okay, or that what someone did to them would be okay if it happened again, and that forgiving this person means it's like a stamp of approval on what they did to me. That's not what forgiveness is at all. I mean, I think the fact that forgiveness is required is evidence that what was done was wrong, and it's not permission to do it again. Forgiveness is, though, and this is still a significant hurdle. It's not easy. It does take the denial of self, like I'm not here to be offended. Although I'm offended at what you did, I'm not going to stay offended. Forgiveness to me, I believe what it really means is that even though you did that and even though it was wrong, if you would repent and if you would never do that again or strive, we all mess up again and again, but get on this path to not continue to do that, that I would be happy for you and that I would just, I would want what was best for you. So I'm putting this behind me. I'm leaving it behind, but I'm not okay with you continuing to do it. And I think a lot of times we think, so we either think we're giving someone permission to continue to harm us, or we believe that it's, we just love ourselves and there's no way we're ever going to forgive anyone for what they've done to us.
So for forgiveness, I think there's two choices with forgiveness. For some reason, I feel injured by whatever happened, as an example. And I can choose to forgive you and keep you in my life, or I can choose to forgive you and set you free, let you go.
Right.
There's nothing that says, from my perspective, nothing that says, based on forgiveness, that I have to keep you in my life. I think what I see people doing is, because they don't forgive, they're allowing those people to stay in their life in a bad memory. I see this in divorces. Well, I'm never getting married again because of X, Y, and Z, what my ex did to me or something. To me,
Right.
that's kind of holding on and not forgiving. Whereas if I say, I feel really violated by my ex's behavior, I can forgive that. I don't want it in my life anymore, but I forgive them for doing that, and I'll move forward. I think a lot of people hold themselves back because of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if we really love, like if I think of just think of my own wife, if she did something that we've been married for 28 years, so maybe it's a little easier because she's loved me so well for so long. But if she did something that hurt me really bad, I hope that I would be more hurt over why she would do something like that than I would the fact that she actually hurt me.
Yeah.
And what I would desire most is that I also need to heal and recover from whatever I went through, is that she recovers, because what she did to me didn't say anything about me. It said something about her. And if I love her, then that's not who I want her to be, but not because I want her to be something for me, but because that I don't want her to be that, because I don't want her wrecking her own life. So if we really love someone, we will be the first to take a stand whenever they're selfish, not the last. It's like if I just love myself, or I just love what I'm getting from you, I'll let you get away with almost anything but murder, as long as I'm getting what I want, or I'm getting more than I'm giving out of this relationship. But if I really love you and I see you doing something that's selfish, even though you may not like me and I may get less of what I want, I'm going to confront you for your sake, not for mine. And so loving people means doing, again, what is best for them. And when they cause hurt, it's a lot easier to forgive if we didn't love them if we didn't keep the golden rule to get the golden rule.
Okay. So how does one overcome hate with themselves and others? How does that happen? I mean, and is hate really, really fear? Are those really one and the same?
Yeah. So a lot of times when I ask people what's the opposite of love, they'll say hate. But the truth is, hate is just a fruit of fear. So if love has an opposite, I would say that its opposite is fear, and then hate is the fruit of that fear.
Right.
If you talk about, like, when I think we mentioned before when we talk about or mentioned about self-hate, like why do people hate themselves, and why is it that when people hate themselves that they struggle to love other people? And so then what you have to get down to is, why do they hate themselves? Like yeah. And why does someone, this is a better question, why does someone hating themselves keep them from loving other people? Because that's where the real rub comes. That's so whenever a man is doing a terrible job loving his family, or when he's failing to love his family, or he's abusing his family, he's doing all these things, what you almost always find is if someone questions them, or psychologists get involved and interrogate them, what they find is that this person hates themselves. That's what you'll get out of it is, I hate all these things about me. Well, why does hating yourself result in you hurting the people that you say you love, but you're failing to love? And I believe that is because what happens is this person, this man, we'll use that as an example here. He was hurt, and he was hurt multiple times, and his wounds have not healed. So he's walking around. So people who hate themselves, what they are, if you could picture them, they're people walking around covered in sores. And so if this person comes into your life, everything's great. They're trying to keep everybody happy. But as soon as you bump into one of their sores, then they come undone on you. You might not even admit to bump into one of their sores.
Right.
But they're wrecking their own life. Why? But they say because they hate themselves. But I would argue that self-hate and self-love are really, they both have the same problem, and the problem is selfishness. So they're the only wounds that never heal. Everyone's been hurt. Some have been hurt a lot worse than others. Most have been hurt worse than me. But I'm just telling you, there's some people that get hurt and then they heal and they continue on, and they don't hate themselves and they don't love themselves. They love God and they love others. But if someone can't heal, then you got to go, why aren't these wounds healing? Why are they stuck in this cycle of all of these wounds on their body that won't heal, that they're always easily offended, and they're destroying all their relationships? And so psychology will say, well, they hate themselves. The solution is to love themselves. But the problem is, the reason they're not healing is because they won't quit nursing their wound.
Is that forgiveness? They're not forgiving themselves?
Part of it is forgiveness, but we don't heal ourselves. We can't heal our own wound. I mean, when we first get hurt, we can nurse them a little bit when they need a little bit of attention. But then what we need to do is move on and allow those things to heal us. But we all do move on, but how we move on matters. And the mistake that people make is, after being hurt too many times, is they get to this point where they say, you know what? That was one too many. From now on, it's me first. So that means if you touch what I have kind of scabbed over, but it is not healed on me, then I'm coming for you. And all of that's because I'm me first. I'm trying to, but if you'll take these same people and you can get their focus off of themselves and on others, and loving, it's loving, not being loved, loving that heals us, that heals our wounds. And so if you can get them loving, then these wounds will begin to heal, and they'll heal enough, and then they'll scar over, and they'll be so tough that the same things that used to easily offend them, now you can't even offend them at all. But if you take people from this hate and tell them, hey, so the problem with self-hate is self-focus. It's selfish. If I hate myself, I'm always focused on myself. But then you tell the same person they need to love themselves. The problem with self-love is that it's selfish. It's self-focused. And love is selfless. So if you can teach people how to love, to do what's best for others without regard for themselves, even whenever they feel like they're empty. No one's ever really empty of love. They can always love. As they begin to love, they begin to heal. What were you going to say?
I was going to say they just don't recognize it.
Right. Well, they think the world tells us we're a cup, and that until our cup is full, we don't have anything to give anyone else. Or we can't give away what we don't have. But that's not true about love. And we're not a cup. We're like a conduit. So you can be completely empty. I bumped into a guy that had everything he owned in a plastic bag the other day in front of a grocery store, and it just like nothing there. And I had bumped into him years before, and he remembered me, and he stood up and he thanked me for something. I don't even remember what it was. And he sat back down, and I thought, the guy didn't have anything, man. But if the president of the United States would have just told me what he told me, it wouldn't have meant any more to me than it did coming from him. And so he was empty, but he made a decision to love him when he did that. So what happens when we can be empty, but we can choose to love, and when we do, the love of God flows through us to someone else, makes a difference in their life. And then our wounds are getting healed in that process as the love flows through us to them. But we want to plug it up. Whatever it's like, hey, I've been running on low, something flowing through me. I'm keeping it, Jack, plugging this thing off. And then we start, killing love in our lives.
Well, Kenny, this has been an interesting conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with us. How does one get in touch with you if somebody's interested in talking to you or learning more about you or have questions from you? What's the best way to reach you?
Well, in the age of social media, which is almost everything now, I'm a handle, I call it, because I was back in the radio days, but it's just John Kennedy, like the president. My last name's Vaughan, Vaughan. So I'm John Kennedy Vaughan on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And then we're also Shields of Strength. We make a jewelry line called Shields of Strength, and we're the same, at Shields of Strength on any social media platform. And we're pretty easy to find.
shieldsofstrength.com.
Yes, sir.
You know what? Let's just take a minute. Let's take a minute. Tell me a little bit about Shields of Strength. I've heard about the dog tags, but take a minute and just explain what Shields of Strength is.
Yeah. So, in the beginning, when the podcast, I was saying, Tammy started writing the scriptures on my equipment. And then after that, that was around 2000 or late 97, 98, 99 in there. I'd won that national championship. That piece of God's word, it was kind of like the seed that got it started. And I wanted a daily reminder to be a better father. Couldn't carry my equipment around. She had written this stuff on, my athletic gear. So I wanted a daily reminder to be a better father, better neighbor. And I just bought a blank dog tag and I engraved those scriptures on there, and I just wear it for myself. And then I gave one away and made me another one. I did that a few times, and I saw some of those people wearing them later. And then I started making them more in bulk. And then around 2000-ish, 9/11, you probably remember all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And some soldiers had gotten a hold of some, and then we were putting Joshua 9 on them, said, be strong and of good courage, do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And they just went wild in the military. Long story short, we ended up making millions of them for the military. And then after about 10 years of doing only dog tags, we started making a jewelry line. And now we've got probably 500 pieces of jewelry, and then the dog tags as well. But every one of them, everything we make has a scripture on it. It's just a reminder of God's word. We're just trying to plant a seed, praying that it could be for someone else, what my wife did for me.
Okay, I got it. Okay. Well, thank you, Kenny. I really appreciate you sharing so much of what you learned with us. And actually, I'd like to have you on again sometime in the future. I don't think we're done talking.
Hey, and thank you. I know you kind of reached out, and we didn't know each other. And thanks for being willing to care what I have to say, and willing to trust anything I share. As always, don't be afraid to slap me around if you see me off course. We're just seeking the truth at all costs.
You have been listening to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. Subscribe to hear a new and unique guest each week as they comment on their life's journey and share experiences with lifestyle, culture, and career. You can always find us at minuteswithmango.com.